Good evening. Welcome to Stab the Dragon for Whiskey Review number 28. That's a very unseasonably cool evening here in Fort Worth. It's been in the 60s basically most of the day. It's May 24th, 2022, and so normally we're up in the high 90s by now. But we've got thunderstorms inbound, and what that means is I could lose power, could have a hailstorm, or worse, who knows. But tonight I'm going to be reviewing this Cliff Bourbon Barrel Proof. This is another Texas whiskey from North Texas, or is it? To a large extent, this is kind of a mystery whiskey with a lot of controversy around it. So let me hit the summary first, then go into the details. My total score for this whiskey is a 57. Letter grade, C. Now you may notice that my total score is lower than what the letter grade says. That's just kind of how my grading system comes out. Well, what's my recommendation? While this is certainly not the worst whiskey I've reviewed, it's pretty far down. My initial neck pours when I purchased this a couple of years ago were awful. But letting it sit in the cabinet for a couple of years greatly improved this. And adding a dash of water also helped. So this is drinkable, and in fact, it can be pleasant to drink at this proof. Its cloudy past and obscurity in the present really subtracts a lot from the experience for me, though. The namesake of this whiskey is what attracted me. It's taken, but that attraction's taken away some by being distilled in Houston. So see, it's named for Oak Cliff, which is a neighborhood in Dallas. But when you get into the details here, you find that it's distilled in Houston. And furthermore, it does not taste like it's been aged in Texas. So, that brings up some questions as well. So if you're interested in Texas whiskeys, this one is one maybe you should consider, but use caution. Clearly, there are a lot of $30 whiskeys that are a lot better than this one. This is about $30. It's not a real good representative of Texas, and with the company being in business for 10 years, it should have had time to fix the problems that are with this whiskey. However, if you're a proof hound and you crave barrel proofs, then this is a $30 bargain. Now, while I'm glad I went ahead and purchased this, tasted it, and reviewed it, I don't plan on buying another bottle of this at all. So that's my recommendation. Now let's get into the details. First of all, with the history. Oak Cliff is a large neighborhood in Dallas that used to be a separate small town, but was annexed by Dallas in about the 1901-1903 time frame. I've seen different dates on that. The people that I've known through the years who were from Oak Cliff have a strong sense of community pride. I mean, really, people, when they say they're from Oak Cliff, there is a pride in their voice. Now, I've seen this whiskey in Goody Goody and Total Wine in Fort Worth and purchased this. I think it was late 2020, but it could have been early 2021. So a year and a half, maybe 2 years at the most. And I purchased it thinking this was from Dallas and being interested in North Texas whiskeys and looking at the price for a barrel proof, I went for it. Now, who owns this whiskey? Dynasty Spirits is headquartered in Dallas, Texas, and they are the producer. But on the bottle, it clearly says it was distilled. Well, let me read this. Okay. Aged a minimum of 12 months, bottled by Oak Cliff Whiskey in Houston, Texas. Okay, and then, so I'm not sure about it being distilled in Houston, but it was bottled in Houston. So, that's kind of weird. Some of the other things I've read about this indicate that it is distilled in Houston, but it doesn't list the distillery. So I'm reasonably certain that this is distilled and aged in Houston, but We just don't know which of the distilleries there. So that's a problem, a lack of clarity. The website for Oak Cliff Bourbon is basically useless. It gives you all the hoo-ha stuff, but no valuable information at all. And I could not find one single review online or YouTube of this barrel proof edition. Both reviews that I saw are for the 80 proof version, and they were either negative or tepid. The Dynasty Spirits website is equally useless. So you've got a Oak Cliff whiskey website, and then you've got a Dynasty Spirits website, two different websites. There's a link between the two, but they're both useless websites. From February 27, 2020 review by Nick Leghorn at 31 Whiskey, and I like 31 Whiskey. I go to their reviews frequently. I got some information about the whiskey, but again, there's just not much to be had out there. Dynasty Spirits was founded in 2010 by Andrew Lee Siegel in Dallas, but in 2012, some of his investors knew something wasn't right, and an FBI investigation followed, lawsuits followed. Siegel pled guilty, apparently, to several crimes in 2015 and served time in prison. In 2018, the company was sued by Brown-Forman, owners of Jack Daniels, over the shape of the bottle for Dynasty Spirits' other whiskey brand, which is Lone Hand, a Tennessee whiskey. The bottle's very much like this, and so I think they've modified their bottle as a result of the lawsuit. This apparently was originally almost exactly a duplicate of Jack Daniels, but now we have rounded corners instead of upturned corners, and so I don't know what the older bottles were like, but presumably they were like Jack Daniels. So that's if you can be sued by Jack Daniels, I guess you're I don't know, imitation is the finest compliment, I suppose, until it gets to the courts. Now, when you go to the Dynasty Spirits website, you find that Siegel is no longer mentioned anywhere. Instead, there's a Devin Odell, and this was confusing too, because he's pictured as the founder and president since 2012. And so I don't know, if where Odell was in the picture, but if he's the founder, then who was Lee Siegel? I don't know. So again, the information I'm getting on this is conflicting, and that's about all the stuff I can get on this mysterious whiskey. So 1 point for history out of 1 point out of 5, because if you get raided by the FBI, if you go to prison, and then you get sued by another whiskey company, you're pretty much controversial and somewhat interesting, if obscure. And if you've not one but two useless websites that give no real information that also counts, not to mention not one single review of your barrel proof bourbon after being in business for 12 years, yeah, history 1 point. Marketing, bottle, packaging. I find the name attractive, Oak Cliff Bourbon, hence my purchase. The bottle, I like. I mean, it's a kind of a classic shape, and obviously it's kind of imitated on Jack Daniels. It's reasonably attractive, but it's got close to zero information other than claiming to have been bottled in Houston. And it's got the legal stuff there. It's got the proof, 750 milliliter bottle, 120 proof, and aged for at least 12 months. So, it's got the basic information. I haven't seen any advertising for this. I've not seen, again, just two reviews of the 80 proof version. So, marketing, bottle, packaging, and this is a screw top, by the way, like that. So, really, only 2 points out of 5 for that. I mean, I like the bottle, the label's okay, but just nowhere near enough information. So, 2 points. Composition. This is labeled bourbon, so that means by law it has to be at least 51% corn in the mash bill. And we know nothing else about the mash bill, but the bottle says it's aged over 12 months. It's 120 proof. So, again, composition, that's pretty weak. And even though it says it's bottled in Houston, and 31 Whiskey says that, I think it was distilled in a Houston distillery, but, I'm just not real sure. So I don't know for sure if this was aged in Texas. It doesn't taste like it. But composition, only 7 out of 15 points. Appearance, for a 120 proof whiskey and being aged in Texas for over 1 year, this is exceptionally light. This looks as light as a blended scotch. It does have decent legs, but you know, this appearance has me some concern. The last review I did here on StabtheDragon was Tabacaro. Tabacaro rye malt, and then before that, Tabacaro bourbon. You saw how dark that was, and it was only aged for a year here in Texas. Maybe I should have brought a glass of that out here, but this is exceptionally light compared with the Tabacaro. So this does not look like it's been aged in Texas. So I just don't know what to tell you. So appearance, 3 out of 5 points. Aroma. I can smell something, which is unusual for me in a bourbon, but it's neither pleasant nor inviting. Really, it doesn't smell that good at all. Almost bitter. You know, it's hard for me. My nose just doesn't work very well, but this doesn't smell good. It smells a little bit bitter. The weird thing is at 120 proof, I'm not getting an alcohol burn in my nose at all. You know, I would have expected to get a strong whiff of alcohol, so you don't get that. But for a rather unpleasant smell, 3 points. Now for the taste. Now here's a teaching point. When I first opened this bottle 1.5 years or 2 years ago, and I got the neck pour, it was not good at all. In fact, it was terrible. I'd never had anything that bad. I tried to drink it neat, and then my next pour, I tried mixing it with some cinnamon whiskey that I had, and I'm not a fan of cinnamon whiskey either. It ruined both. I mean, made the cinnamon whiskey worse, and cinnamon whiskey made this worse. I had to pour it out. It's the only time I've ever just poured out a glass of whiskey. The 2 first pours from this bottle, I poured both of them out. It was terrible. Now, having sat in my cabinet for 1.5 years or 2, it actually tastes better. You know, and I like that 120 proof. It has a pleasant kick. The flavors here include some sweet honey, a bit of citrus, and a little bit of bitterness, like that could be from the barrel. But there's no bad alcohol flavor going up my sinuses. I mean, this is 120 proof. This is actually amazing. It doesn't, you know, so it has a pleasant punch, but it punches below its weight. Absolutely. This is significantly better than my first 2 tastes a year ago, and that's the teaching point. Don't give up on a whiskey. I was ready to dump the whole bottle, and I just didn't, and it sat up there in my cabinet for 1.5 years or 2 years, and now it's drinkable. I can't explain that. I mean, they tell you, oh, there's nothing to the neck pour idea. I'm here to tell you, several times in my whiskey adventures, my first 2 pours, even 3 or 4 pours from a bottle, I've not liked. But if I just wait and try it some more, it improves. I don't know if that's the exposure to the air, if it's my palate adjusting, if I'm growing in my ability to enjoy whiskey. I'm not sure what the deal is there. But this is significantly better than my first 2 tastes 1.5 years ago. Now, this is not going to be a favorite. It's drinkable now, but here's the deal. There is absolutely zero Texas funk. None. Despite being aged over a year, it says, in Texas, I don't know. That's odd. You combine that with the lighter color, makes me wonder if maybe it was in a climate-controlled warehouse, aged in Kentucky. Tennessee, I don't know. Now, the other night, I mixed it with some water, and that brought out the sweetness a little bit more, and it still had a nice kick. So tonight, I'm going to do something I've never done with my videos. I've got a rocks glass here, and I'm going to pour the rest of this into the rocks glass. Now this is a kind of a first for me. I've done whiskey on the rocks a few times with higher proof whiskeys, and frankly, it ruined the whiskey. I prefer whiskey neat, but this whiskey at 120 proof, and it needs a little bit of help. I'm gonna see what happens with a couple of little ice cubes in here. Okay, and see if this improves, because there's, despite the proof, man, I'm getting no bad alcohol flavor, no bad burn, nothing. You know, it's a little bit sweet, a little bit citrusy. So here we go. That didn't help it. No, I like it better neat. Yeah, that took away some of the sweetness. The other night I added, you know, just a few drops of water, and that kind of helped the sweetness. But with the ice, that's not really helping. That brings out the bitterness. It hides the sweetness. That's weird. I mean, it's not nasty like it was the first time I had this a year and a half ago. Didn't do that to it, thankfully. But the ice really did not help. Okay. So all in all, this was a surprise because of my bad experience a year and a half ago. Never judge a whiskey by the neck pour. Never. So out of 25 points, I'm going to give this 18 points. The mouthfeel and finish, you know, even though it's 120 proof, its mouthfeel is a bit thin compared to other high proof whiskeys. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, it's not thin, but man, I've had higher proof whiskeys like this, and it had kind of a richer mouthfeel. So this is kind of medium. The burn is actually pretty good. It's not offensive at all. You know, when it's straight, it has a little bit of a Kentucky head, but nothing big. The flavors on the finish were good when it was neat. Ice robs it. Yeah, ice doesn't do this any favors at all. $11 out of 15 for mouthfeel and finish. Price, value, and availability. Total Wine had it for $30.99. Goody Goody, $29.99, which is where I purchased mine. But I think the price is a bit lower now than when I bought mine. I think when I bought it a couple of years ago, it was maybe $32 or something like that. Specs does not list this bourbon, and I don't remember seeing it at Specs. I don't think it's there, but maybe not. Again, Specs website's a little bit sketchy. I think the price is good for a craft bourbon, if that's what this is. I just don't know enough about it due to the lack of information. The flavors, the proof, and the price match okay. In other words, I think it's a good value. You know, $30 for a barrel proof, even though it's not going to be the best, still, price, value, and availability, 7 points. Neat or mixer? Well, I tend to drink neat, but adding a dash of water improved this bourbon somewhat the other night when I sampled it. Adding ice, that didn't really work. But again, I very rarely drink whiskey on the rocks. So would this go good as a mixer? I don't know. And you know, the proof would be okay as a mixer. Flavor, I don't know. The flavor's a little bit weak, understated. So neater mixer, only 3 points. Bonus, with its cloudy past, its unknown distillery, that's going to detract. But again, its name to honor Oak Cliff, I can only give this a two bonus points. So you add everything up, and what you get for a total is a 57, which is a C. Now, my conclusion. I'm really glad I went ahead with this review. I was just going to pour this bottle out. I gave it another try, and much improvement. So I think I can go ahead and finish drinking this bottle. But you know, I really wasn't looking forward to doing this, and so I'm actually happy that it came out with a 57. That's an improvement over where it was. You know, maybe it's my palate improving, I don't know. But giving it time, it's worked out, and so it's drinkable. And that's what I would urge you to do if you've got a whiskey that you just really don't like. Give it another shot. Give it a try. Well, that's all for this edition of Stab the Dragon out here.